Want to give a shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for all of the continued support. Hey everybody, I am back with part 4 of my series called The Top Fantasy Books According to My Viewers. A month or two back, I did a huge survey of my viewers where they got to pick their all-time favorite fantasy books, and I am going through the list from 100 to 1 in batches of 20. This is the second to last of these updates, and in a week or two, we'll get down to 20 through 1. If you want to talk about these in more detail with me, I would love to engage with you on my Discord channel. It is the best and fastest growing adult fantasy Discord, adding hundreds of people every month, and I would love you to be one of them. So let's start this video off with number 40, and that got 25 votes, and this is The Great Hunt. This is book number 2 of 14 in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. And I personally really like this book. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. I thought it was an upgrade in basically every way from the first one, The Eye of the World. It just felt more unique. The first one, while I liked it, it felt like a lot of cloning from The Lord of the Rings, and you know there was a good reason for it. I think books that came out back then, you kind of had to do that to be able to get published, but this is where he started to do his own thing. It didn't reach the peak, I feel like, until a couple books from this one, but this is an extremely good book, and I've always kind of thought that in the Wheel of Time, and I hate when people tell me this, so I hate it so much that I'm going to impart this knowledge, but I've always said that you kind of got to read the first 3 Wheel of Time books to really know if it's for you or not, which is a big commitment because they're big books, but you know, I definitely think that this is a step up from the first one in basically every way. The next one is number 39, and this got 26 votes. And this is 𝐒𝐨𝐧𝐬𝐬. 𝐒𝐨𝐬𝐬𝐬 is book number 1 of 8 of the City Watch sub-series within Discworld. Discworld is huge. It's 40-something books, and you can read them in any order within the sub-series. So I read them all from number 1 to the end, whatever it is, 40-something. But you could also just start here, because it's a sub-series and you don't need any other knowledge. This is by the one and only Sir Terry Pratchett, and this is the highest-rated Discworld book on this list. So this is the last you're going to hear about Discworld. I gave this a super easy 5 out of 5 stars. At the time that I read it, it was the funniest book that I've ever read. That sense has been superseded by a couple books. But this is just downright hilarious from start to finish. Literally, the first pages that you open up, I couldn't stop laughing, and I couldn't stop throughout the end, and these weren't like small little chuckles. I was outwardly laughing at many times, and it's one of them. It's one of those Discworld books that I just cannot wait to forget about a little more, so I can come back to it and just be able to hit it fresh again. It's just such a fun story of introducing these characters in this Night's Watch group of these really kind of half-assed city guards. They get wrapped up in this larger quest, and it's just an incredible book that you have to read. If you're going to start Discworld, definitely I suggest you start with 𝐒𝐨𝐬𝐬𝐬. Number 37 is a two-way tie with 27 votes. And this is Jade City. This is book number 1 of 3 of the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Just absolutely loved it after it got going. When it started going, it felt like a Godfather clone, like overtly a Godfather clone, not just because it's a mafia book, but because a lot of like the plot points kind of hit and the characters in the family, but as the story developed, it turned into its own thing. This is an Asian-inspired fantasy kind of mafia tale, and I just love it. I mean, there's not the most action in this, although there is some, but this is a character piece of enormous quality. The plot is just to die for. It does have this urban fantasy setting. Some people hate that. Some people love it. I kind of hate that kind of thing, but I loved it in this case, in part because Fonda Lee is just such a good writer that I think she could have set this anywhere and I would have loved it. The second in the two-way tie at number 37 with 27 votes is Royal Assassin. This is book number 2 of 3 of the first trilogy called Farseer in the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, and in retrospect, I find myself thinking about this book a lot. I thought that, similar to a lot of my feelings earlier in this video, I thought the second book was an improvement upon the first in most ways, in large part because Robin Hobb takes a long time to introduce these characters and get you to feel who they are and understand who they are, because you read this series because of the character work and the prose that's developed, and it took a long time for these characters to get introduced. And now they're here. You don't need any of that backstory, so you can kind of get right in. The action is a much higher pace, and I just love it. I mean, the series is most certainly not for everybody. It is a much slower series, even though this book's a little bit quicker. Even this book's a little slower. But if you're looking for a series that's just got the most magnificent character writing that you've ever read, this is the series for you. And start with that first book, and then eventually get to this one. Number 36 with 28 votes is Assassin's Apprentice. This is book 1 of the first trilogy of Farseer, In the Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. And it's wonderful. And although I find a lot of people don't love this first book and they get taken out of this story because of what I just mentioned, Royal Assassin, it does take a long time to get going. You're going to read this for hundreds of pages and be like, when is the action going to begin? Well, it doesn't. There is light action, but there's some suspense, some light suspense. But you're going to start to feel for these characters. You're going to start to learn how to cry in a book if you haven't before. And you're going to find a character that keeps getting knocked down and keeps picking himself back up again. And it's just an emotional masterpiece that I can't say enough positive things about. So before moving on, I want to mention that this video is sponsored by Novello.com. This is an exciting new publishing and reading platform. The goal of Novello.com is to make a one-stop shop for all things writing and storytelling. Novello.com offers an intuitive, user-friendly way for writers to create and share their awesome work for readers to enjoy, all while maintaining total control over their stories. Everything from content to pricing is all controlled by the story's author. So whether you're looking to release your story for free or finally make some bucks off that masterpiece you've been working on for the last decade, Novello.com is what you're looking for. With future plans, including support for comics and a marketplace for users to sell other writing-related services, the future of this platform is looking bright. And the best part, it's all available for free. No sign-up fees, no membership, just a growing library of epic tales. So enjoy the epic adventure of Blackwater by an award-winning author, or grab the popcorn and enjoy a terrifying battle for survival in Limbo, The Door Above the Lake. Whether you're a casual reader or a professional writer, Novello.com is the place for you. So moving on with this list, at number 35 with 29 votes is Dune. This is book number 1 of, I don't know how many, but there's a lot of Dune books. And this is by Frank Herbert. And I don't know what I give a star rating to this, because I read this book so long ago before I ever thought about star ratings. But if, gun to my head, I think I give this 4 stars. I listened to this in an audiobook, and I don't think it's labeled as a graphic audio, but it certainly has that presentation quality where every actor has their own voice actor associated with it. It's just an amazing way to receive this content. This book, I've been told by people, is more sci-fi than fantasy. When I look at it and I read the description and I remember about it, it feels like equal parts fantasy and sci-fi. A sci-fantasy, if you will. And there's a reason this book is a classic. I don't love science fiction elements. Sometimes I do. And I don't always love these older feels to stories. There are some that I really enjoy. I've been reading Raymond D. Feist books, and I've just been in love with those. But yeah, 4 stars I think is good, but yeah, which is probably like the lowest score you're ever going to hear for this book from anybody. Book number 34 on this list with 30 votes is The Bone Hunters. This is book number 6 of 10 of Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. This is one of my all-time favorite books, and it's from my all-time favorite series. An easy 5 stars. I can't say too much about this book without ruining the series, because the series is so epic in scale and huge, with hundreds of characters, hundreds of POVs, thousands and like 10,000 plus pages in the series, or maybe not quite that many, but like 9,000 or so. And yeah, this book has one of the most epic fantasy moments that I've ever seen, where I couldn't put down the book for 100 or so pages. Just had me glued to my seat. Just magnificent, and I just thoroughly can't wait to read this book again someday. Number 32 is a two-way tie with 32 votes, and the first one is Wrath. Wrath is book number 4 of the Faithful and the Fallen, and for me, this is by John Gwynne. And surprisingly, this is not the highest rated of the Faithful and the Fallen books, but it certainly is for me because this is one of my top 10 favorite books. Easy 5 stars, obviously. The Faithful and the Fallen is this newer fantasy story, but it has this old school kind of fantasy take to it. But it does a really cool thing with religious prophecy. I won't say more than that. I've said more than that before, which I didn't think was a spoiler, and people got upset with me, so I'm going to avoid that and just not say much. Instead of saying it has a great take on religious prophecy. You've read them before. This is one of the best takes on it. The fourth book is just so action-packed with battle sequence after battle sequence. Some of the battle sequences, I can just vividly remember every single detail of them because John Gwynne just writes the most perfect action sequences out of any fantasy author. So also at number 32, and this is the last of that two-way tie with 32 votes, is The Wisdom of Crowds. This is book number 3 of the second trilogy in the First Law. That trilogy is called The Age of Madness, and this is by Joe Abercrombie. I gave this, again, an easy 5 stars, which is a common theme in this video, which I would hope it is, because these are the best fantasy books of all time, apparently. And yeah, another one I can't say too much about, but this is one of, I think it's like my second favorite First Law book. I think the end of the first trilogy is my favorite as I think about it. But this is my second favorite. And it's wonderful. I couldn't believe the series ended so well. I should have seen things coming that I didn't, which is the mark of a wonderful tale. When an author is able to do that to me, I just thoroughly eat it up. I love the writing of Joe Abercrombie so much, and even better, somehow even better than Joe Abercrombie, is Stephen Pacey, the audiobook narrator, is hands down the greatest audiobook narrator for fantasy that I've ever heard. And I've only actually listened to him First Law, so maybe he's not. But his performance in the First Law, and I've listened to way over 100 audiobooks, is bar none the best. So at number 31 with 33 votes is Ship of Destiny. This is book number 3 of the second trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings, which is called Live Ship Traders. This is by Robin Hobb, and this is the highest rated Realm of the Elderlings book, and my highest Realm of the Elderlings book. It is a super easy 5 out of 5 stars. Again, I'm saying that all the time, but it just is. This book has boats. I love boats. Oh, I love boats. Magical boats that can talk, which is just awesome. And this series gets dark. It's the only Realm of the Elderling story, although that's not true. One of the trilogies, one of the 4-book one is, but it's in third person. I think it's in third person, the other one, but this one's definitely in third person. Unlike the other Realm of the Elderlings books that are all first person from Fitz. It's just, the characters are incredible. This is peak Robin Hobb for me. And if you didn't love the first trilogy, and you're like, oh, Realm of the Elderlings not for me, go read the second trilogy. Yeah, it's got basically nothing to do with the first one and is better in every conceivable way. Number 30 on this list with 34 votes is Kings of the Wild. This is book number 1 of 2 of the band, and there are 3 planned. This is by Nicholas Eames, and yeah, another 5 stars for me. This book was just a wonderful, Patrick Leo recommended this to me, and I couldn't thank him enough for this. It's got this cool 70s rock and roll vibe to it, with a ton of like pop culture references thrown in there, which are just magnificent in the story. It's these older heroes that are, bringing the band back for one last big hurrah, and it's just absolutely enormously fun. Book number 28 here is a two-way tie with 36 votes, and it is The Two Towers. This is book number 2 of 3 of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. And yeah, I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is probably the lowest you're ever going to see this book rated. It was good. Really good. Just not amazing. And I just don't love The Lord of the Rings the way it's written. And I find so much modern fantasy stories to be written better. This is The Godfather, right? And nothing would exist without it. And I recognize that, but I just don't love it as much as most of you love it. But yeah, I really like this one. And I think it's my favorite Lord of the Rings story. And there's so many things about this story that I just loved. And I thought the pacing was just really well done, better than the first and the third. And just, yeah, a must read, but you've read it, so I don't need to say that. So the last of that two-way tie at number 28 with 36 votes is my favorite book of all time, The Crippled God. This is book number 10 of 10 of 𝐒𝐿azim Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. Obviously, this is a 5 stars, would be a 6, would be a 10 if I gave that kind of score. Yeah, and this is the last book in 𝐒𝐿azim Book of the Fallen. This epic story, it all just winds up so perfectly, and I can't think of a better ending for a story like this. And these massive plot points and these epic moments, the redemption of characters, the compassion, the forgiveness, seeing the end of these story arcs. It just doesn't get any better than this. Book number 26 is the two-way tie with 37 votes, and this is The Wise Man's Fear. This is book number 2 of 2 with 3 planned from the King Killer Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 on my first read, like 9 years ago, but I read it again recently this past year, and I gave it 5 stars. It's just wonderful, and I think the only reason I gave it 4.5 is I immediately read it after The Name of the Wind, and I thought The Name of the Wind was a lot better. I no longer think that. I think this one's better than The Name of the Wind. It doesn't need that setup that The Name of the Wind had, and upon rereading it, I thought The Name of the Wind started very slow. This one just gets right into it, and the writing quality is just so wonderful, and Patrick Rothfuss, I just hope that last book comes out when you're ready to put it out, because I hope it's wonderful, and if you need more time to write it, do your thing. I just hope it comes out someday. So at number 26, this is the two-way tie with 37 votes, and this is Dead House Gates. This is book number 2 of 10 of 𝐒𝐿azim Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. Another 5 stars, as almost all of the 𝐒𝐿azim Book of the Fallen books are for me. This book did this super cool thing that I've never read before in a book, where the first book told this story on this continent, and then the second book said, yeah, we're going to tell this new story now on a different continent with almost none of the same characters. Some of them, but almost none. Just totally different story. I've never seen that before, and I thought this book was just wonderful, so much better than the first one. I do think that you need to read this one to its completion to be able to understand whether the series is for you. In fact, I think you should read the first 3. But if you do finish the second book here, and you're like, yeah, not for me, then yeah, you can bow out, because I thought the ending of this is maybe the best ending of a mid-book in a series story that I've ever read. I've certainly read conclusions to series that I like more, but I don't think I've ever read one kind of in the middle, and it'll always stick with me, and I can't stop thinking about it all the time. Number 25 with 38 votes is Ruin. This is book number 3 of 4 of The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. Surprisingly for me, this is the highest rated Faithful and the Fallen book. I gave it 5 stars. I think, in my opinion, each of the 4 books gets better than the previous one. So I really, really like this one. And yeah, it has a huge character development on one of my favorite characters that I've ever read, Macwin. I hope I'm saying that right. And yeah, the story gets more epic, more intense. You start to realize more about the mystery going on here. Just huge, wonderful action. You're just so pulled into the characters. And I just loved every moment that I had to enjoy this thing. Number 24 with 39 votes is Warbreaker. This is a standalone in the 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐼 universe by Brandon Sanderson. I gave this book 4 stars, which on reflection I think is a little friendly. I might give it lower, but I think 4 stars is decent for this. I just don't love standalone stories, but this is a fun one. It involves this magic system based on colors, which is, I've never read anything like that before. I since have when reading Lightbringer. But yeah, it's a fun tale. It's got a wonderful ending, as most Sanderson books do. I really, really loved the ending. I liked a lot of the characters here. The plot had some weird kind of pacing things to it, and I didn't connect with some of the characters. But in general, a really fun read that I'm sure that I will reread someday. Number 23 with 41 votes is The Heroes. This is the second standalone in the First Law universe by Joe Abercrombie. I gave this book 4 stars, and upon reflection, I'm going to be rereading this soon. I'm probably going to bump it up to 5 because I just love Abercrombie books, and I made a mistake on this one. I didn't focus enough while listening to the audiobook. This book is about a 3-day long battle. You kind of really got to pay attention to what's going on. I was kind of doing other things while listening to the audiobook, and I really just need to focus on it because, I really want to visualize all the set pieces here going on, maybe look at a map, see where things are going on, kind of read this like I would a history book, although the action and the quality of everything is about 1,000,000 times better than any other history book you're ever going to read. Number 22 with 42 votes is The Return of the King. This is book number 3 of 3 of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's got a great ending. It's got a good story. I thought there were some moments that really dragged on, like that hike through Mordor, and people hate me when I say that, but it goes a little long for me, and with not a lot happening. A lot of like, oh, we went here, we went here, we went here. It feels kind of samey, but really fun story. And again, love the ending, and it's just a classic tale. And the last on our list here, down at number 21 with 43 votes, is The Shadow Rising. This is book number 4 of 14 of The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I gave this book 5 stars. It had wonderful twists that I never saw coming. Just amazing sections with the ale, I don't know how to say it. I read it, didn't listen to it. And just this wonderful, like, amazing sequence. And if you've read this, you know what I'm talking about, where it tells the history of these people by going slowly forwards through time. And it has much more character development with Nynaeve and Elaine. You get to know them better, and the sea folk as well. And yeah, just a wonderful book. And yeah, just thoroughly loved it. So that is the end of my list. Join me next week or the week after that, where you will get to see the final part of the sequence. So thank you so much. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Anna G, Brian, CJ, Darren, Jonathan, My Book is Lit, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Anna, Andra, Angelo, Ben, Blair, Brock, Evan, Jen B, Harry B, Jamie, Jeff Pixler, Maria, Michael Sugarman, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion.